This is Jacwilgre from Greenland Gamers. Today I'll be walking you through Volk's Master in the mobile game Dragalia Lost. Let's get started! First, let's go over what you need for the fight. You want to have a max and bound tier 1 Agito weapon to be able to meet the DPS check. Although healers are probably fine using a high dragon tier 2 weapon, a partially unbound Agito weapon, or maybe even a max and bound Chimera Tech weapon. As for might, you probably want to be hitting mid to upper 9,000s at the very least as a DPS character. Technically you can get by with lower might, but it'll impact the DPS your team is dealing in the fight. As a healer, you want to be hitting at least mid 8,000s, although your might is less important than your utility, so you can most likely get by a bit lower than that. If you're having trouble hitting any of those might numbers, you can upgrade your flame altars now that they have levels 36 to 40, or you can upgrade your flame tree, which has 10 extra levels. Also, the newest update gave the Drakeliths 10 more levels, so you can also work on those for extra might. As for dragons, Galomars is always the best choice for DPS characters, but others such as Apollo, Konohana Sequoia, and Dread King Rathalos can also work. Arctos can also be run on characters with a lot of crits, such as Ezalith. The best dragon for healers is Popstar Siren due to her utility, but you can also bring in Phoenix or any strength DPS dragon as a budget option if you don't have her. If your team wants to stun Volk during the fight, Arctos is usually equipped on the healer, although it can also be equipped on Ezalith without impacting the DPS output very much. The Wyrmprints you use in this fight vary depending on the character, but you most likely want to have the new Me and My Bestie print on everyone, except the healer for the Burn Punisher. Elegant Escort is also fine in place of Me and My Bestie if you don't want to or can't get that print. I'm not going to touch on specific prints to use for characters, but if you're in doubt, the second slot can easily be taken by skill damage print for the specific weapon class, such as Twinfold Bonds for daggers or the Shining Overlord for swords. As far as shared skills go, you should use the Agito weapon skill if possible. The other one can be dispelling skills such as Ranzel's, or a stunning/freezing skill such as Anelli's or Dragoneel Cleo's if you want to stun or freeze Volk during vital points in the fight and don't want to bring Arctos in. The healer probably shouldn't equip the Agito weapon skill, as it would be a better help if they equipped either another healing skill or a buffing skill, such as Emma's. It's also common for healers to run stunning, freezing, or dispelling skills as their second shared skill if you want to do that. Now, onto the characters and comps for the fight. Ideally, you want to have at least one character with sleep res and at least one with stun res for the best survivability. Good stun res characters include Marth, Xania, both Mims, and lastly one of the newest characters, Nadine. Yuden is also a viable stun res option, but is overshadowed by Marth. Among the other options, Xania and the Mims are less favored, but still not bad choices. Nadine is newer, but it seems like she has also become a solid stun res option with both Burning and Dispel built into her kit. At the time of this video's recording, however, the dominant stun res choice is Marth, and you'll usually see 2 or 3 per room. As for sleep res characters, we have Ezalith, Halloween Lowen, Crom, Nobunaga, and Emma. Ezalith is the most popular DPS choice among the sleep res characters for the fight right now, especially with her ability to get tons of crits with shared skills. Crom and Nobunaga are also decent sleep res DPS choices, just slightly less preferred than Ezalith. Crom is sometimes more preferred for this fight because he has burst potential for Blood Moon, which I'll be touching on a little bit later in the guide. Halloween Lowen is the go-to healer for this fight, with his good supportive skills. Emma can also sub as a healer now with the addition of shared skills, but can't be recommended for players new to the fight because of how long it takes for her to get heals off. She actually makes for faster clears than if you were running with Lowen, but everyone needs to be playing closer to perfect. Okay, now that we've looked over the characters and comps, let's look at the mechanics or abilities that Volk has in this fight. The first is Plague. This is a special affliction that some attacks can give you, such as any attacks by Volk's wolves and a few of Volk's attacks. When plagued, your resistance to all afflictions is lowered to the point where you're basically guaranteed to be afflicted by everything that can afflict you. Plague will wear off over time, but can be accelerated by healing. If you are near any teammates when your plague wears off, it'll spread to them. The second mechanic or ability Volk has in this fight is Lifesteal. This mechanic makes it so that some of Volk's attacks will heal him. He heals more health based off of the damage he deals, and also heals more if he hits multiple players at once, but cannot lifesteal off of plagued players. Upon attempting to do so, he will be plagued instead, and his lifesteal mechanic will be turned off until he is no longer plagued. Do note that when Volk is plagued, he is also more susceptible to all afflictions. Now that we've gone over the fight's mechanics, let's get to his attack patterns. Please note that these patterns will slightly differ in each run because they are based on his health, so your team's DPS and the amount of health he is able to lifesteal will influence what he does in the fight. With that aside, let's get started. He starts the fight by transforming into his beast form and dealing unavoidable damage to all players. The damage isn't strong enough to be problematic if you have the proper equipment. Next, he will summon 4 wolves, one in each corner of the map. These wolves will attack by biting nearby players and dashing across the screen. As mentioned earlier, all of their attacks will plague you. Killing the wolves will grant you some dragon gauge. At the same time as he summons the wolves, Volk will instantly go into overdrive and give himself a permanent 15% strength buff. I recommend dispelling this buff with a shared skill such as Ranzel's or Nadine's to avoid it from stacking and causing problems later in the run. Volk will get the strength buff every time he summons wolves, so remember to use dispels for them if you have one available. After he finishes summoning the wolves, he will target the nearest player, lock onto that location, and then swipe 3 times. The first swipe will be in a large arc on his left side and in front of him. Without changing the way he's facing, he will do the second swipe in a large arc to his right side and in front of him. This second swipe goes off a bit faster than the first one. After these 2 swipes, 2 exclamation points will appear on top of his head, and then he'll do his last swipe in a wide area behind him. Be careful, as this attack does not have a marker. As a little tip, the area right in front of him before he does the attack is always safe. All 3 of the swipes lifesteal, so try your best not to get hit. All 3 swipes are also iframeable, so use that to your advantage. He will now go into a new attack if his health bar is low enough, which I'll call Cross Squalls because of the way it's executed. For this attack, Volk will go to the middle of the map, and then shoot 4 squalls that cannot be iframed outwards from the middle, in a cross-like shape. These squalls will go outwards, bounce off the walls, and then return to the middle before going outwards again and then dissipating. The squalls will stun anyone they hit. You can avoid this if you have stun res and are not plagued. In addition to the squalls, Volk will spawn 2 green pools and 2 red pools. The red ones inflict stun, and the green ones inflict sleep. The sleep ones will always spawn in the top left and the bottom right, and the stun ones will always spawn in the top right and the bottom left. You need to get rid of these pools by running into them. Stun res characters run into the red ones, and sleep res characters run into the green ones. Make sure that you aren't plagued before running into the pools, or else you will be afflicted regardless of your resistance. You'll get a skill charging buff whenever you remove a pool, properly or not. If you don't get rid of these pools, they will expand to a little bigger than the quadrant of the screen they were in, and then explode after the squalls have dissipated. The explosions cannot be iframed and will deal massive damage to everyone caught inside of them, in addition to inflicting anyone who is plagued or does not have the right resistance. After Cross Squalls, Volk will summon wolves in the same way as he first did. Next, he will do left, right, and back swipes again. He will then target the furthest player and charge towards them with a large red marker. After this, he will pause for a bit and then go to the middle of the screen where he'll execute the next attack, Snapping Squalls. This attack will focus its targeting on ranged players, but will also attack melee characters if 2 ranged characters aren't available. These squalls will show as purple markers under the 2 players' targets. These will hum on the 2 players continuously until right before they go off. They'll then appear and follow the path in which the players move. Don't go too fast, as the squalls could cut through the middle of the battlefield to get to you quicker. They tried to take the most direct path. The recommended technique to handle with Snapping Squalls is to run to the edge of the map and then run around the edge either in the same direction as the other player or in the opposite direction. Different rooms choose to run in different waves, but I've personally seen more rooms run close to each other before the squalls go off and then run in opposite directions from each other once they appear. After the squalls dissipate, there should be minimal overtime regen healing going around to avoid it messing up the next phases of the fight. Volk will now use a map-wide red marker attack called Overwhelming Hunger. This attack doesn't do very much damage, but will plague everyone hit by it. If you're hit by this attack while plagued, you will be given poison that will continuously bring you down to 1 health, which guarantees your death due to the next attack, which is Steel Vitality. You want to get plagued by this attack in preparation for Steel Vitality, but don't get hit if you're already plagued. Do note that if there are any wolves still remaining after Snapping Squalls, Volk will completely skip Overwhelming Hunger. You don't want this, as it will create problems later on in the run. After Overwhelming Hunger, Steel Vitality will go off. This attack deals quite a bit of damage and can kill you if you took too much damage prior or don't have enough health. This attack will also heal Volk relative to the amount of non-plagued characters. If anyone is plagued, he will first heal off of everyone who isn't plagued, and then become plagued himself. Your team's goal when Steel Vitality comes around is to have as few people plagued as possible, so that Volk will heal as little as possible. Having nobody plagued on your team will make it so that most of the damage you have done to this point will be undone. Another thing you could do to prevent Volk from healing too much is go into dragon form right before Steel Vitality if your dragon is charged at this point. Being a dragon makes it so that Volk can't heal off of you. However, you may want to save your dragon for more damage later in the run. Right after Steel Vitality, Volk will use Snapping Squalls. This time, however, it will target all 4 players, which makes for a lot of chaos if it isn't handled properly. There are 3 main options. The first is for someone to interrupt Volk right before this phase to avoid it completely. The most common way to do this is by using Arctos to stun him. However, some people use shared skills that freeze or stun, such as Nellies, Few Arms, or Dragalia Cleos. There are even a few people using Dragalia Giantafreeze. Do note that you can't freeze Volk unless he's plagued, which shouldn't be a problem right here if everyone was plagued to prevent Steel Vitality from healing him. The second and most common option during this phase is to cooperatively move around the edge of the map in a circle with your team. Usually everyone goes clockwise. The last option during this phase is similar to the second. Basically, you shapeshift and then either tank it with a well-timed dragon skill, or move around the edge like normal for added protection during this move. If you stay still, try not to be in someone else's path, or they may run into your squall and end the run. As soon as the 4 squalls have dissipated, Volk will go to the bottom left of the screen and start the resentment phase. Black mist will take up the entire map except for an area close around Volk. Stepping into this mist will plague you and deal little damage over time while you're in it. During this phase, a lot of things will happen at once and repeat continuously until the resentment phase is over and Steel Vitality has gone off. First, there will be 3 Ghost Wolves dashing across the screen from top right to bottom left. There will also be 4 sets of Ghost Wolves targeted on a player. The targeting on this attack is slightly random, but most of the time it seems to target the closest player. Volk himself will be doing his left and right swiping attacks during resentment. Lastly, there will be stun and sleep pools spawning at the very bottom of the screen in groups of 3. The first 3 that spawn during this phase will all be stun pools. The next set will all be sleep pools. Finally, the last set will always be sleep, stun, sleep, in left to right order. Each set of pools will detonate right before the next set appears. The last set will detonate around the time that the next attack, Steel Vitality, goes off. Right after you've removed all the pools that you can in the final set, jump into the mist so that you are plagued when Steel Vitality happens next, so that Volk, again, doesn't heal. Usually during or right before Steel Vitality, the mist will dissipate. Next, Volk will summon 4 wolves again. If you kill enough of them in a short period of time, it seems like he'll use this move twice. He will then swipe thrice in the normal left, right, and back order. He may use a couple more moves here, but as soon as his health bar gets low enough, he'll go into the last unique attack, Lunatic Judgement. This attack, often called Blood Moon, will completely wipe your team unless you destroy the weak point. Volk will heal his Blood Moon a ton while he's charging up, so you can't rely on dealing giant damage numbers alone unless you can basically one-shot it. There are several ways to deal with Blood Moon. The first way is to interrupt it with stun or freeze. If you stunned him earlier, you'll have to plague him to stun him again. Otherwise, you can stun him without much difficulty. To freeze him, you still must plague him first, or else he will always resist. The second way to kill Blood Moon is for everyone to shapeshift at this point, as Volk cannot heal from dragons, so you can just dish out damage in dragon form. If not everyone has dragons available, you can plague him so he doesn't heal as much, and then attempt to kill Blood Moon. Lastly, you can bring characters such as Crom into the fight, who can deal enough damage with a single skill to essentially one-shot the Blood Moon. After the Blood Moon has been destroyed, Volk doesn't have any more major tricks up his sleeve. He basically goes back to his patterns at the beginning of the fight. First, he does 3 swipes, then cross squalls, and then charges at the furthest player. Then he does 2 Snapping Squalls, Overwhelming Hunger, and Steel Vitality. He doesn't go into 4 Snapping Squalls next, but rather goes straight to Resentment. Not long after Resentment starts and the first pools appear at the bottom, Volk will go into another Blood Moon. If you want to stun it, and you haven't before, you can stun it normally. To stun another time or to freeze, you again need to plague him before doing so. After the Resentment phase is done, Volk should be basically dead if he wasn't already. Otherwise, all that Volk does is continuously repeat his rotations from earlier in the fight again and again until he's dead, or you time out. I don't believe there's a third Blood Moon, although there might be if you get far enough without killing him. If you get to this point, most likely your team's DPS is too low anyways, or you let him heal too much throughout the fight. That should be it for this guide to Volk's Wrath Master. If you want to see some clears of the fight, you can check out our channel and go to the playlist for Dragalia Lost. I put a card in the top right if you want to link directly to that playlist. I have so far published clear videos using Marth, Ezalith, Zania, and Vita at the time of this video's release. Thanks for watching! I hope this guide was able to help you. If you enjoyed it and want to see more content from Greenland Gamers, make sure to subscribe.